Are you a Gen Xer? Well, there may come a day when you're going to become a caregiver. And long before that happens, you should put in place a plan because no one wants to do this kind of planning in the middle of a crisis. And here to talk with us about that is Sandy Adams. She is a certified financial planner with the Center for Financial Planning. Sandy, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure. And it will be a pleasure having you share your knowledge about this topic, which you have personal experience with.
Yes, absolutely do. So I've been advising clients on this for almost a couple decades now, but this last summer, I suddenly realized that I was experiencing it myself suddenly when my parents' health kind of changed on a dime, and I was the only caregiver that my family could rely on. My brother's in another state, and he just couldn't take on any responsibility. So, boom, I'm a caregiver, and that's how many of us as Gen Xers, kind of in that middle between aging parents, and a lot of us sometimes still kind of getting kids launched and sometimes grandkids, right? So we're that middle generation that are suddenly caregivers, and sometimes it's a sudden event and sometimes it's slowly over time taking on more roles with aging parents are now caregivers. And now I'm one of them. I can say I've now advised clients and I'm one of them as well.
Yeah. So Gen Xers, from your perspective, face some particular concerns that they're the smallest generation and other factors that make this
Yeah.
particularly unique to them. Tell us
Yeah.
more.
Yeah. So, not only are just because of where we are in life, we're, in that middle where aging parents are relying on us more. We might be raising children. We're all also at many of us in our peak kind of of our careers where, we've got a lot going on with work, as well. So we're juggling a whole lot all at once. And it's hard for us to kind of figure out what and who take priority. And we have to figure out how to juggle it all. Also, kind of, many of us raised to be independent. So we have a hard time asking for help when when it comes time. So we think we have to do everything all on our own.
Yeah.
So all of these competing priorities, and that takes 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 us a minute to kind of pause and think about how do we prepare ahead of time to make this all work.
Yeah. I want to talk about the 5 steps that new caregivers should take before the crisis hits.
Yes.
But before I do,
Yeah.
there's this notion that we often say that when the time comes for adult children to take care of their parents, to become caregivers, that you are now reversing your role. You are now parenting your parents. But you
Yeah.
have some thoughts about that, don't you?
Yeah. I think we need to reframe how we think about that. I mean, it's always been this thing where we say, oh, now the parents are the kids and now we're taking care of them the way they took care of us. And I think that's kind of I call it a misnomer. I don't think we should treat our parents like kids. I think they deserve the respect um, all the respect we should give them. And I think we ought to think of it more as a partnering role than a parenting role. So, think of it as helping them make decisions in a time where they're most vulnerable, and at a time where they're going through one of the most one of the hardest transitions that they've ever gone through, and taking the experience and the things that we've learned about them over a lifetime and helping them make the wisest decisions, and actually helping guide them, but allowing them to make the decisions for themselves to the extent that they can.
Yeah. So lots of steps that
Yeah.
new caregivers should take.
Yeah.
Walk us through those.
Yeah. I mean, first and foremost, if we can get ahead of things as much as possible, before a real crisis hits, that's important. So having conversations with family and with your parent, um, ahead of time. It makes the biggest sense. So to the extent that your parents are still able to have those conversations and be involved in decisions, having those conversations ahead of time. How do you want this to look for yourselves? What kind of things do you want to happen as you age and have health challenges? Let's have those conversations. How do we want this to work? And with siblings and other family members that are going to be involved in those decisions. Who wants to take what kind of responsibility? How do we want to divide things up? Let's talk about that before a crisis hits. Um, and let's talk about like important documents. Let's know where those are. Let's make sure they're in place. And because sometimes in my personal situation, my parents didn't have those documents completed. They thought about it, but they didn't have the documents signed. And then when dad ended up in the hospital, the healthcare power of attorney wasn't signed yet. So that could have been bad.
Yeah. So when you talk about the documents, there's obviously the easy ones, right? A HIPAA release, a power of attorney
Yeah.
for healthcare.
Yeah.
Other things that they need to be on this
Yeah,
list.
but let's make sure that, there's a will, if a trust is appropriate. Let's make sure beneficiaries are named and they're the ones that they want. Um, just like all of the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed.
Yeah.
Go through all of those because sometimes you named those, put those documents in place, name those beneficiaries 20 years ago even longer in some cases and never reviewed them.
Yeah.
Um, so, all the things.
Yeah. Step 3?
Step 3 is let's talk about um, you know, family communications around um what does the financial plan look like? What can mom and dad potentially afford as far as care, if that is something that might happen in the future? And start putting things in place. Um, Make sure that mom and dad are, maybe even put in place a family meeting with financial professionals, and make sure that we all know what the plan is going forward.
Yeah.
Um, Talk to mom and dad also about what kind of care and who they want to care for them is kind of that second step to that, kind of number 4 and number 5. What is their priority as far as where they want to be cared for and who they want to care for them? Some people are adamant that they want their family to care for them. And then others will say, I don't want my kids to change my diaper. I would I want them to be there for the quality conversations, but I would rather have a professional do that other stuff for me. Those
Yeah.
are 2 different things. And then kind of one of the biggest things is to build a support network.
Mhm.
Especially for Gen Xers who have so many other things going on, there are a lot of things you need to delegate for
Right.
others to do, professionals. The legal stuff, the financial stuff, even kind of the caregiving stuff. Um, Someone like a geriatric care manager can really take a lot off your plate when it comes to the care and the medical side of things that unless you're in the medical profession, you have no idea
Yeah.
what all of that is about. They can really be your partner in helping you walk through some of that, um, and take a huge weight off your shoulders.
Yeah. So when you talk about family communication, starting early, getting clarity around this, oftentimes I'm told that these family meetings can be difficult to start. Maybe the parent doesn't want to talk about it. Maybe the child doesn't know how to bring up the topic. Any advice around how we can sort of make these things happen?
Yeah. So a lot of times, as in my not in my, as my caregiver as the daughter role, but my role as the financial advisor, I can be that person to say I can bring that up if I'm the advisor to say, um, this really helps for the old, as the financial advisor to the older adult, I can help bring that up and say, this is something you can give as a gift to your family to really communicate your wishes and help you stay in control of your own future as you age. Um, and make sure that you are, helping them know what you want as you age, and it's a huge burden that you lift.
The other thing that's on my mind when I think about caregiving is the degree to which I need to know about my parents, loved ones, medical situation, their diagnosis,
Mhm.
diagnosis,
Yes. Yes.
etcetera. What do we need to know about that?
So, as much as possible, being an advocate for your parents on the medical side is something that you take on as a caregiver. Um, it's a lot of information to know in a world where, unless you're a medical professional, it's hard to keep up with. I
Yeah,
mean, I went back and got a master's in gerontology, but still, I don't know all the medical terms.
yeah,
So ask a lot of questions, but again, taking on a team member as of a like someone like a geriatric care manager, if indeed your parents' caregiving need is long, is very helpful because they can help interpret the medical language.
yeah, yeah,
So even to have them go along on, if there's a long-term hospital stay or visits to the doctor or even, interpreting medical records to say, hey, help me understand what this says. Because what you end up doing, my assistant today, her husband's going through something, and she said, I go to Dr. Google, and then that, all that does is scare me. So, you don't want, that just creates additional stress. So, having a team, someone on your team that can help you
yeah,
with the medical language is a godsend and just helps relieve
yeah.
time and energy and emotional stress.
All right. So one last question. When I think about caregiving, it's not anything that we've been trained to do. I would refer to it as just in time training, right? Like the day before, I didn't need to know about any of this stuff, and the day after, I need to know everything there is about it. And a lot of times, people might feel like they're failing at it because, well, they don't know, right? Talk a little bit
Right.
about that.
Yeah. I mean, never feel like you're failing doing, if you're doing something for the person you love. You're doing your best, and that's all you can do is the advice that I give.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and always, uh, there are times that I've spoken up on behalf of my father, and it's like probably something I never, some of the, speaking up that I've done is something I never thought I would do because I'm not a very forward person, but you do things you have to do.
Sandy, I want to thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us about this topic. It will benefit a good many people. So thank you.
Anytime.